Uh, Good morning or good afternoon, I suppose, depending on where you're located. And welcome to another webinar from us at Satori. Good to have you join us. Today's topic, what we are covering, is to do with, I suppose, a topic that we come across a lot, and as we like to tackle the various systems and data issues that our clients that we see at our clients. We certainly learn lots of lessons, and wanted to share with you something across really the whole accounts payable automation space. So an area that we're seeing a lot at our clients, and we'll talk a bit about what we're seeing there, and what things that we think are worth noting and thinking about in the space. So if we just jump to the next slide. Yeah, I suppose as per normal, I'm joined by my usual panel. So to those of you who've joined us before, these should be three familiar faces by now. So myself, Mark Bookhatz, I look after growth within the Satori business. I'm joined by Troy Nicholson, who's a co-founder of the business and looks after business development for us. Natalia Levenkova, General Manager of Customer Success, lots of practical experience across our customers, and I'm looking forward to the discussion around the space. Before we get into it, again, just as a quick reminder, we will be looking to take questions. So there should be a Q&A panel in your Zoom session that you're looking at now. Feel free to pop in any questions as you see them, as they come to mind. We'll probably take them at the end, but it would be great if you just pop them in now while they come to you, and we look forward to the discussion around that. We'll also be running a few polls, so pay attention to those. But yeah, I suppose we really wanted to start by just talking about our credentials and our understanding of the accounts payable space that we're focusing on. So Troy, maybe hand over to you to just talk us through that.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Morning and afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. So yeah, I just thought I'd share this slide, snapshot of some of our customers in Australia and New Zealand. And I guess it gives us some credibility to talk on the subject of AP automation, because all those logos you see there have some type of automation from in some form and different maturities. There are a small number of those that have achieved full automation. However, a lot of them are still on the journey to automation. So all the lessons we've learned has come from working with all these amazing companies and customers. So essentially there's 5 categories. When we talk about automation, there's 5 key categories. Most organizations, when they talk about automation, it's really around the automation of invoice data entry. So OCR, or optical character recognition. Most organizations, that's a big part of trying to give them a lot of efficiencies, removing a lot of data entry from the business, less reliance on people, less keying errors, and it's a big part of automation. The next part, when we talk about automation, is really around the invoice workflow approval process. So rather than using spreadsheets or even paper-based approval processes, it's really about having approval process in a proper IT system that'll can have approvals built in, rules, and also reminders and tracking. So the third area, which we see a lot of organizations, is around implementing 3-way matching. Probably it's a difficult one. I mean, in theory, it works well. Natalia is going to share some experiences of where it can go wrong. But look, it's some companies do it really well, and others, there's always an excuse why you don't need a PO. And it'll fall down if you aren't regimented with raising PO properly. Payment automation, so moving away from manual file uploads to the bank, is a key part. Also, it's a big part of reducing the occurrence of a fraud in the organization, internal or external, and the integration with ERP systems. So whether it's SAP, Oracle, TechOne, creating a more integrated platform. Some of our customers use third-party automation products. So if they're using SAP, they may not be using the SAP OCR or AP scanning, invoice scanning technology. They may be using another third party. So it's making sure that they're all integrated. So what are the stats? So a lot of organizations, as I mentioned, it's probably matches to our customer base, are partially automated. We deal mainly with larger organizations around the over $250 million revenue range. So they are becoming a lot more sophisticated. There's been a lot more drive for transformation. And as I've discussed, based on our stats as well, is that only a very small fraction of our customers have achieved the full automation from end to end without any human interaction. Everyone asks about AI, and everyone wants to implement AI in the process to, again, create more accuracy, to create more efficiencies. However, still very early stages and only a very small percentage of customers. And this is a global survey out of the UK, and only a small fraction of those customers have actually implemented some type of AI across the AP automation space. So, as I mentioned, a big part of it is the reduction of processing invoices. So being able to process invoices a lot more efficiently, a lot more accurately, even though the stats say that 99%, which I think in our experience maybe is a bit higher. We think the accuracy is actually a lot less, but nevertheless, based on this survey, if you're processing 10,000 invoices a month, that's potentially 100 of those invoices that may be incorrect or have a problem. So we was asking our customers, well, without using a monitoring tool, how would you actually know what those 100 invoices were? And that's 1,200 invoices a year potentially that could have an issue or an error. So obviously it's a huge improvement in productivity. But there's always a manual upload. There's always a manual process. Our customers have complicated systems. They have diverse systems, multiple systems. They're acquiring businesses. They're selling companies off. So it's always a moving target. So there are challenges in terms of getting rid of those manual processes. There's always an excuse why there needs to be a manual process. So, Mark, over to you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Troy. So I think that was a great introduction, just to understand the the various stats and the state of play and what we're seeing out there. So what we wanted to do, just to kick things off, is really launch a poll, which hopefully you guys can see in front of you now. Just trying to understand where individually each of you watching this is on the AP automation journey. Anything from you've already implemented it and you're quite well down the track, right through to no plans to implement. We're interested to understand whether people are quite advanced in this or whether this is still a future consideration. I can see some of the answers coming through, and I'll give you guys a bit of time to click on the various options, and then we'll just share the results. Okay, I think that hopefully is enough. I see there's a few more clicks coming through, but let's end it there. I'm sure there's others. So just sharing that with you now, and Troy and Natalia, I'm not sure if you can see that, so I'll just read it out just in case it's not coming through. 38%, so probably the majority, have said that they've already implemented to the fullest extent, and I think that's obviously what we're here to discuss. 33%, a third, are in the process. 10% are in planning stages. 19% would like to consider it but haven't commenced the process, and nobody clicked on "we do not plan." So clearly this is an important consideration for everybody, right from beginning stages through to having already achieved quite a bit with it. So any thoughts on that, guys? Would you have expected the majority to have already kind of gone through it to quite a full extent?
Yeah, I mean, I think it reflects on what we are seeing. Quite a lot of implemented all the way, which is great. So look, it's good to see, as you said, good to see that nobody's in a position not planning to improve, which is great.
Yeah, no, that is true. But also good to see, I suppose, that there's quite a few, or not good, but interesting to see that even though it has been quite a popular topic of the last few years, there are still a number out there, both either planning or would like to do so, and that accounts for like almost 29%. So there's still a lot of work to be done in this space. All right, so thanks for that, guys. I think, Natalia, the next section was really for you to talk us through some of your examples, what we've seen out there, some of the things to look out for. So over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. So I prepared a few examples on what Troy mentioned before. So the first topic I'm going to cover is OCR implementation, and maybe it will help people who are still planning to implement AP automation with some considerations. So what we see across our customers that very often the challenge is that OCR systems misread poor quality scans or complex invoice layouts. And another issue might be when your vendors are changing the invoice layout, and it might lead with also different issues with the scanning. And the risk there is really around data integrity. So it might lead to incorrectly processed invoices and in the end to potential duplicate invoices. I remember the time when our customers just started moving on to the OCR, using OCR tools. And what we clearly could see is the shift from data entry errors, manual data entry errors, to the data entry errors from the OCR. So the volume very often stayed the same, but it just the root cause of the issues was different. So what we did, we started actually implementing lots of analytics for our customers that are not around our typical duplicate invoice checking, but more about looking at the invoices before they even became duplicates. So one of the examples here to specifically look for zeros instead of O's in the invoice number. That was a typical issue for one of our customers, and they wanted to have a separate test on that. So you can see that the invoice number was picked up as 0CT in the middle of the invoice instead of October. And that was recognized as data entry error. And the invoice was amended to the correct invoice numbers. So people, when they look for the invoice, for whatever reason, they could find it and not enter a duplicate invoice. Another example, again, very similar, but in this case, they had to cancel the invoice because by the time when they corrected it, the duplicate invoice was processed, but luckily they were not paid. So that was, again, quite easy fix. My next example is around duplicate invoices. So this is like the second level control when the issue wasn't picked up when the invoice was entered, but the duplicate invoice was processed. So that's another typical case when we have a dash and no dash in the invoice number. Another example, what we look at would be OCR date validation. That's another issue. Dates are more structured, obviously, and it's much easier to to pick them up correctly for the OCR tool. However, what happens when the invoice layout is changing, sometimes it picks up wrong date. And that's the case on the screen when invoice was posted with the incorrect date, and then it was corrected by the team. So those are typical examples around optical character recognition tools and the challenges. Another case study I wanted to look at is around three-way matching. So very often when people automate this process in full, they have quite strict matching logic, and it might flag false positives. For example, when we have minor discrepancies between purchase orders and other documentation in the process. In this case, what happens that the whole automated process stops, invoices held up, it delays payments, and it leads to manual processing of the invoices, creates more errors. And also what Troy mentioned, that when people realize that it's happening, they tend to try go around the process and not raise purchase orders and things like that. So I have an example here where purchase order price was entered incorrectly. So it had to be fixed, but so we picked it up, we fixed it, but it stopped this automated process. So people had to go and apply some fixes. What we see that people do sometimes, that they allow for some discrepancies, which is good, but still just keep in mind that it's not possible to have this three-way matching process completely automated with no issues. There will be still hiccups that lead to manual steps in the process. And the last topic I want to talk about is, I'm not going to use examples here, just quickly go through typical things that you might consider. So in the automation, there is a high reliance on master data. So the automation tools will work nicely only if you have your vendor master data in order. If this data is compromised, outdated, or incorrect in any way, and no one verifies it, you might have some issues such as, for example, payments going to wrong bank accounts if this information wasn't updated or compromised in some way in your master data. Lack of segregation of duties, also typical challenge when the same person, for example, can approve vendors and also process payments. So it can be some other parts of the accounts payable process. So the risk there that it speeds up the execution and processing transactions, but you might miss some malicious or accidental changes in the data. Incorrect data entry or mapping, another issue. So what we see with our customers, them being large companies and organizations, very often they process large batches of payments automatically. And again, if any details such as bank account, which is a very typical example, if they entered incorrectly, say during onboarding, or they migrated incorrectly from another system, again, automated process will be executing payments going to the wrong accounts. And the last one, so the first three were around mostly errors and oversights, and the last one is fraudulent vendor changes. That's something what we see from time, not very often, but we see it several times, I would say a year, where business email compromise happens and a fraudster provides incorrect or fraudulent details to the company, and then they pay money to the fraudulent account.
Thanks, Natalia.
Great.
So back over to you, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Natalia. I mean, I think that's a lot of useful examples there to consider, and hopefully, people had a bit of food for thought there. I'm going to launch the next and final poll, and really, what we are interested in understanding is, especially on the back of what Natalia was talking about. Clearly, any level of automation, there still will be some gaps, some errors, and we're interested in understanding whether this is something that you've considered in your organization. So answers for anything from we're just not concerned of any gaps, and you're pretty convinced that automation will plug all the potential issues, or you're planning to look at some additional controls or haven't really considered that. And obviously, finally, really looking at, if AP automation is not on your radar, then clearly this is not a relevant question as such. Just give it a bit more time, and All right. I think I'll stop it here. Apologies if I'm cutting anybody off, and share the results again, just for the benefits of you, Troy, and Natalia, and anybody if it's not coming through on the screen. So the 4 options. First option was, we're not concerned that there'll be any specific gaps. Nobody answered that, so that's good. I think our education is working out there, guys. People understand that there are other potentials. The vast majority answered the second option, 86%, which is we use or plan to use a number of additional controls outside of AP automation for better control. A small 14% said we haven't considered any additional measures, or we're still undecided. And that might make sense, especially for those who are still planning. And the final option was, we do not plan to implement AP automation, which was 0% based on our previous poll. That does add up. So yeah, by far and away, it looks like the majority are looking at some additional controls to deal with that, and which is encouraging. Any thoughts there, guys, on the back of that?
Sorry.
No, that's very good to see that most of people use a plan to use some additional controls, because as we know, there is no one single answer to cover all the gaps. So that's really nice to see.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest objections we get when we're prospecting for new customers is that they say to us, look, we're getting AP automation implemented, so we don't need any monitoring at all. We'll be fine. So it's good to see that actually the truth is that people are adding additional controls and also looking at outside for AP automation monitoring, which is good, which is what we know, because we've got a lot of customers that we are sticky with our product and use AP automation. So thanks, Mark.
Yeah, no, that's really true. And I suppose what would be interesting, and maybe just invite the audience as part of the Q&A session, if there are specific controls or areas that you've been thinking about, possibly we haven't mentioned, or other solutions that you're thinking of out there, pop them into the Q&A, and we'd be interested in discussing those in a couple of minutes when we start wrapping it up.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
Great. Yeah. So really, over to you, Troy. I know we were just going to look at.
So I just got a couple of extra slides here just to leave everyone with just so some of the challenges I think Natalia has mentioned is that really it's about people. So the holy grail is to have 0 human touch. But if people in the organisation aren't brought along on the journey, they don't understand why it's important, then it's not going to work. No matter how good the system is and how much you spend, it's always about the people. Consider, is it fully automated, or actually it's all automated apart from this upload file we use for these type of payments, international payments or payments to this particular customer. It's all automated apart from that. We find that a lot of the time when we're working with our customers. And I think, I guess good to hear from the poll is that, of course, again, I mean, it's probably just prospects trying to telling me to go away politely, but just relying on automation, and people believe that I've got automated, I set and forget, I don't need any audits, it's covered. I think that can be a bit of a recipe for danger. So I think there are 3 points that we see that create challenges. And just a couple of takeaways is, if you're on the transformation journey or already completed a journey, is that monitoring should be considered part of the transformation, just like buying a Kofax or an automation workflow automation tool. Part of the transformation journey should be, once we're live, how are we going to make sure that we're monitoring the system, that it's not making errors. And obviously the idea is to automate, so you don't want to have manual people trying to check things with spreadsheets. So it should be a consideration. And big thing is by monitoring the system with a tool, you can then start to get some very handy insights in terms of error rates, where the errors are occurring. Is it the OCR? Is it the workflow component? Is it POs not being properly derived before getting an invoice from the supplier, and then from that feedback, improve the system, the training, work with the OCR, the vendor, to improve the reading of particular invoices around invoice numbers if that's a problem, work with the procurement department, plug the gaps, and then reduce the number of exceptions and problems that may occur. So it's just really gold plating it's a journey. It's not from day one that's going to work, but a journey over time.
Right.
So that's it from me, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Troy. I think that's a great summary and again, important points to note. So got a few questions that have come through. I'll go through those. Just anybody else who has got any other comments or questions to ask, feel free to pop them in now. So the first one is from Mary. It actually references you, Natalia, so clearly you'll answer this one. It says, "Hi, Natalia. Are these examples using Satori's OCRing, or are they from other OCR vehicles like Kofax?"
Yeah, so that's the from others. So our solution is purely a monitoring solution. So we don't process the invoices. What happens is that once invoices are going through the OCR solutions like Kofax, as soon as it hits the ERP, we get the extract and we check all these things to make sure that the invoice, because the many OCR solutions, they also have some monitoring, and they might cancel some of the invoices that obviously incorrectly processed, but then the rest goes into our system to pick up any additional issues and report it to the user so they could fix it.
Yeah, okay. No, that's great. Hopefully that answers your question there, Mary. Another one from Teresa. For those organizations on the webinar that are still planning controls, do you recommend where to further investigate industry effective controls? Guys, any thoughts of where best to start looking at effective controls over and above, of course, what AP automation delivers?
Yeah, so look, we've working with all of our customers. We've come up, look, AP processes and P2P processes are fairly standard across most organizations. So a part of our platform does have ready best practice developed key control monitoring tests that we can offer our customers. So that's really what we see giving the most value, is just picking, and we know we know the places where they can go wrong, and working with these customers for so long, got most of the key control areas covered, and we can tweak those tests to suit any customers' nuances in their process.
Yeah.
So just next question from Maria: any tests we can recommend to pick up issues you mentioned?
Yeah, so that's a nice segue to these questions from Maria. So for when we are on board new customers, we always recommend to start with something straightforward, such as duplicate invoices. But then for more mature customers, we suggest even more controls to monitor the invoices before they became duplicate invoices. So as soon as they entered, we monitor the invoices to see if there are any incorrectly processed invoices where the invoice date or number entered incorrectly. And what happens after that someone would look up this invoice, they're not finding it, and they enter it again. That's like the typical way how the duplicate invoices happen. So for the next step is always to monitor for accuracy of your invoice data. And on top of that, of course, we suggest a whole lot of different tests around master data integrity, because we can see that improving the integrity of the master data leads to fewer exceptions on the duplicate invoices.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is that is running this daily. So every day, every night, these tests run over the previous day's data. If there's been a change to a supplier, a new supplier, and there's an issue, it'll be picked up. And what's really valuable about what we can offer is the each exception that's derived needs to be closed with the issue, action, and root cause, and that information then bubbles up into a dashboard that can then give you areas for process improvement. So identify what's going wrong. So are we making lots of, the key one is what we find all the time is the scanning of the invoice number where it's an O, not a zero. And
then you can improve that in your OCR system, so you see less of issues like that.
Yeah, so with the ERP systems, they only typically have detected an exact duplicate. So if you put a dot after the invoice number or an A, or if you put the incorrect cents in, or if you transpose the cents or the dollars, or put the wrong date in, it won't pick it up. It'll see it as a individual invoice. So it's important you go beyond just the exact match.
Yeah. Well, Maria, certainly feel free to reach out if there's specific scenarios you're concerned with. Yeah, because I think we, even three-way matching and some of the others that you've spoken about during the webinar, there are, I know we sort of cover the whole gambit depending on where those gaps might exist. But I think we've pretty much run a bit over time. Yeah, just big thanks, Troy and Natalia, for preparing that, sharing your thoughts. If what we will do is we will be sending out this recording to you in the next day or so. So look forward to getting that. If there's anything else we can help with, feel free to reach out to us. And we will be advising of the next webinar in due course. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.